This project was funded by the FCT, the Portuguese Foundation for Research. It's about fighting overindebtedness. And the main goal, as the title suggests, is to empower consumers in order to promote better decision making. One interesting thing about this project was that we could find different profiles of overindebtedness. And that was an interesting part of the project that involved collaboration first with DECO, the Portuguese Association for the Defense of the Consumer. DECO, of course, has access to consumers associated to DECO, and in particular to over-indebted consumers that seek advice at DECO to help them solve their difficult situations or attenuate their difficult financial situation. This is a perfect situation, right? You have data, lots of data, and you have theories that you want to test based on this data. The thing is, when it comes to this large amount of data, you cannot use standard statistical analysis, you have to use big data analysis, mainly artificial intelligence and machine learning. And for that we start this collaboration with the Information Management School from Nova. They came up with the expertise on machine learning, we came up with the psychology theory, and together we could actually distinguish these different profiles in terms of the main psychological variables, the main risk factors, if you like, that are involved in each of one.
So the artificial intelligence software for marketing, it's an application to help business, but also research to simplify insights basically. So instead of looking 200 pages of results, of findings of a project, you can just have a dashboard when you can click and play and understand the findings and what decisions should you take based on the data. We can actually take two different sides of the problem. One is understanding very deep what do consumers think, how they process information, their motivations, so we can do some interventions to help them. And the other one is more to understand the big picture, like how thousands or millions of consumers behave in group, how do they organize themselves, like in clusters or profiles, and then we can also take better business decisions or society decisions.
One of the main features of human beings is our ability to self-regulate behavior. And self-regulation has been shown to be a resource that is easily depleted. Mainly, it works mostly like a muscle, right? If you exercise too much, you become tired, your muscle becomes tired and you need time to recover. Self-regulation is more or less the same way. If you exert a lot of self-regulation, if you have to make lots of trade-offs, decision-making, etc., that is going to deplete your self-regulation resources, and you might have the chance to relax and recover, but if you don't have that chance, you have to go on and make decisions, and what typically happens is that you start to make mistakes, and that has the negative effect of eventually create situations of financial difficulties and eventually even over-indebtedness. The main goal of this project was the empowerment of consumers. We wanted to fight over-indebtedness at different levels. For instance, we wanted to decrease the asymmetry that we find between the individual consumer and the big providers in our society, big economical agents. Let me try to give you an example. When it comes to certain types of consumptions, as for instance, to buy an apartment, that is something that we as individual consumers we do quite rarely during our lifetime. You can buy a few houses, but you don't do it every year or every month. On the other hand, if you go to a bank, that's their business, or that's at least one of their business. So they're doing it all the time. Of course, they learn a lot about that, and they are really experts. And usually they should be on your side, but sometimes, there can be a conflict of interests. And of course, the big agencies, economic agencies, they will try to defend their interests. So in order to attenuate this asymmetry in knowledge, we try to develop ways to help people to learn more about these financial products or financial service. As for instance, one of the things we did was to develop a software application that allows people to simulate several purchase situations. And not only purchase situations, but other kinds of money management and investments, such as preparing your retirement or the way you use your credit card. And what the application does basically is to provide a safe environment where you can learn about the most common mistakes that we as human beings tend to make, and to give you some feedback, to say, look, you might not be reasoning the correct way, think about this information that you're not considering, think about the way you are making sense of this information might not be the most adequate way, and you might commit mistakes, but they have no consequences, right? The only consequence is that you are in a safe environment where you can learn, because it's just a simulation. And later on, hopefully, when you are in your real life making important decisions, you'll be better prepared to do it in a way that safeguards your interests more than the interests of the economical agencies. Another application that we also developed, again based on our fundamental research, we call it financial health. The idea of this application is slightly different. In this case, the software asks, could you please tell us how much is your income or the income of your household? How much expenses do you have in credits? How much are your daily expenses? And based on this information, the software not only presents you with some feedback, but eventually, more important than that, it provides you with some alerts, letting you know if you are at risk of becoming over-indebted, or eventually if you are already over-indebted, in which case it can direct you to some institutions that could help you. It also provides you with some advice. What could you do to improve your situation? What aspects of your financial behavior you should be more attentive to, because the program analyzes all the data you provide and finds your weak spots. And in the end, the machine learning that underlies this software identifies the profile of the consumer. One of the debates we found in literature is on the relationship between scarcity, financial scarcity that comes from poverty, over-indebtedness in our case, and cognitive performance or cognitive function. And we also contribute to this debate by doing what we call the meta-analysis. So there are different perspectives, different authors, different research pointing into different directions, and when you do a meta-analysis, you can somehow see what is the big trend, right? You can see what emerges from all this previous research as the most noticeable tendency. And our meta-analysis was actually on the relation between scarcity and cognitive performance or cognitive functioning, and we found, as you might expect, that poverty and scarcity is negatively related to cognitive performance. When you live for a long time in a situation of scarcity, your self-regulation suffers, because you are in a constant need of making decisions that are important for you, control your basic impulses, what you would like to do, what you'd like to buy for you and for your family. You are constantly concerned and preoccupied, and all that depletes your cognitive resources. And the ironic effect, if you'd like, is that the more you think, the more errors you're going to commit, because the less ability you have to make the right decisions. So this creates a negative loop, a kind of snowball effect that aggravates your initial situation of already financial scarcity. We also did some interesting research comparing samples of over-indebted consumers and non-over-indebted consumers. We found out that over-indebted participants, when compared to their non-over-indebted counterparts, they present much lower levels of life satisfaction and subjective well-being. And these are important factors because life satisfaction and subjective well-being are very good predictors of mental health and physical health in your future, actually even mortality. And apparently when you become over-indebted, your self-control is highly diminished. And so it seems that the main reason why low levels of life satisfaction and well-being affect so much your mental and physical health is through the loss of self-control. One important aspect that we also studied was what is the general opinion concerning helping over-indebted people. And we found some ambivalent attitudes concerning helping over-indebted families. On one side, people realize that over-indebted families are probably discriminated by social circumstances, but on the other hand, they also tend to blame people who are over-indebted. When we then asked participants if they were willing to subscribe governmental measures to help over-indebted families, they show a slight tendency to agree, but they are close to the middle point of the scale, if you know what I mean. I mean, they're not against, they're not for, they are slightly okay with the idea. And more interesting than that, when we told our participants, okay, let's assume that the Portuguese government is going to provide some financial help to over-indebted families. Now, do you think that this help should be unconditional, or do you think that some conditions should be imposed in order for the over-indebted families to receive help? And we provided some suggestions. For instance, over-indebted can be helped financially as long as they are willing to learn more about financial decision making. Or over-indebted can only be helped if they agree to not use credit cards for the next 10 years, something like that. And in general, people tended to agree with the help, but given these conditions. And this might express the idea that to a certain extent over-indebted are responsible for their situation. Maybe not because they are too impulsive or careless, maybe just because they don't have enough knowledge, and because of that they don't make the better decisions. But if that is the case, then we should teach them about decision making. We should teach them about financial literacy to make them better decisors. Of course, these research are in most cases preliminary research, in the sense that we didn't use representative samples of the Portuguese population, for instance, but they are quite suggestive, and they tell you about human nature, and they tell you about how people react to others. In this case, how do we react to situations of over-indebtedness? And I believe that only if we continue this research, only if you continue the effort to transfer knowledge accumulated in fundamental research in psychology and social sciences to the applied domains, to our daily lives, we can use science not only to improve our knowledge on the human nature, but also in finding ways to empower individual consumers and families in their daily lives, promoting their decision-making quality, promoting their well-being, and ultimately promoting their life satisfaction.